Johnson. I'm a senior outsourcing manager for Psyonix and Epic Games. And I'm excited to introduce this. The word codev is sort of like tech art in that definitions can vary pretty significantly based on who you're talking to. But for most interpretations, codev, the term kind of implies external development at the highest level. And it's sort of like you go to the casino. The first floor with the slots is sort of like your first step into external development. Codev is like you're going upstairs to the high stakes room. The complexity and the team size that are implied by codev sort of imply increased risk, increased potential reward, and increased investment. And it also implies a level of trust. And it's best considered by teams that are prepared to understand all of those. So this presentation came from a long partnership between two people and their teams, navigating the pitfalls and the successes of this endeavor. I would like to introduce Jay Arrera and Jay Minn.
Hello, folks.
Hello. Good afternoon.
Thank you for coming to this talk. We really appreciate you guys. I know you could be out there having meetings right now, but you're here, and we want to share with you the things that we've learned together. Oh, my God, dude. Thank you for doing this, working together over all this time.
And Jay's going to dance.
I can dance. Or we could just skip the show altogether and go to karaoke mode, which can happen, but that's less helpful for you guys.
All right, so by introductions, my name is Jay Arrera. I'm a director of production at Pipeworks, at Pipeworks Studios. Worked on a number of games at Pipeworks. We're a AAA co-developer. We've been in business for 25 years, and 5 of those years we're working side by side with my partner in crime.
Oh, is that it? Okay. My name is Jay Minn, senior technical producer. I'm at Wizards of the Coast, a wholly owned subsidiary of Hasbro.com. You usually know that. If you look at the list over there, that's like a compendium of the companies that I've been at. Crystal Dynamics, as you know, I was there like early days, pre-PlayStation 1, making games for the 3DO system. Do you know? Do you remember the 3DO game
there's
system?
one.
Yes, thank you, 3DO game system. And since then, I've run my own company as an independent developer at Blam. Merger, acquisition kind of stuff happened. And then came back out, did a couple more startups. So I've been on both sides of the table as both the publisher and the independent developer. Very happy to be here with Jay to talk about our games. And let's go. Here we go.
Who's next? Force of nature, it's Vivian.
That was Magic Spellslingers. It was the game that we worked on together, and there's a whole history which we'll get into. This was focused as a portrait mode, mobile-focused card battler. So my boss at the time, Dan McCullough, he had an infant, he had a baby. I want to be able to play this game holding my baby and playing the game with one hand. So we actually did that. He was able to play. Yeah. Notice some of the buttons and all that stuff is set up so that you could just play with one hand. He wasn't smoking a cigarette. Don't worry about that. So we created this game as a mobile-focused answer to Magic the Gathering. Magic the Gathering. Who plays Magic? Yeah, people play Magic. Yes, thank you, nerds. We love you. Magic the Gathering is a very complex game, and so we really wanted to create a lighter, more friendly version of this game. And as a Magic player, lifetime Magic player, we wanted to make some simplifications, make some of the things like you get 8 turns of getting lands, and that's frustrating. So we've smoothed out some of the gameplay edges, and created the project.
So where we came into it is in pre-production. The idea was, when we were originally brought in, is the game was functioning on mobile, and they said, well, we want to port it to console. And very quickly we realized that it was not ready to be ported. So that became part of the partnership, is the honest conversations about what the game was and where it was ready to go. And also then recognizing the SKUs that it was going to become, taking it from portrait mode to landscape mode, handling all the UX issues associated with that. So in total, we worked on this game for 5 years, from concept to sunset. The game, sadly, is not live today, so we've gone full circle with it.
The whole life cycle.
The whole life cycle on the project. On the project, I mentioned it was iOS, Android, Steam, and it was about 65 people all told. At Pipeworks, it was upwards of 50 people of all disciplines. At Wizards, in true co-dev faction, they had engineers, artists, designers, writers, up to 15 people participating on their side. And inside there was a mini squads of additional developers, QA, localization, audio.
Yeah, let's talk about this for a second. Again, we'll talk about what co-dev means to you guys, but this was truly a co-development. Pipeworks couldn't do the whole project on their own. Obviously, Wizards, we couldn't do the project on our own. So big chunk of the 15 folks, aside from publishing folks like myself, other mic production, QA leads, etc., we had the Magic the Gathering card design team, the best on the planet, at how to create, how many mana does this card cost? What is it going to do? How does it interact with all the other characters? And how does it affect the rule set? That core design of the card game came from Wizards, but we didn't have the implementation capabilities. So we partnered with Pipeworks. But again, the other part, it's way more than 65 people altogether, because then we were also working with other vendors, Keywords for QA, LineBridge for localization, Formosa for audio, and unknown Roommate helped us with some of the art for the game as well. And so Roommate was only one of several concept art vendors who actually created the card art for us. So truly a team effort.
Yeah, hundreds of people were involved, all told. So we're going to talk through, these are the topics we're going to talk through today. We're going to introduce kind of what is co-dev, set some terms. We're going to talk about as a service provider, getting the job, and then doing the job, and then working together about how to get the next job.
Yeah.
So what is co-dev? So we think of it as on a spectrum. There's, on one end of the spectrum, we've got full development, where you have the entire responsibility for the project from soup to nuts. You're responsible for all disciplines, all creative. You're making all the decisions associated with the project. You have full, complete agency. On the other end of the spectrum is outsourcing, where you basically have a very well-defined problem. You have a specification. You're told, go make this thing, and it's assigned. It's thrown over the fence. It's delivered, and it's implemented. Then there's a gray area in between, and a lot of it has to do with how much defined the problem is and how much the impact is if you don't get the answer right. Staff augmentation, kind of working towards the full dev, you're working within the partners' systems, whether they be the first-party developer or the publisher or the lead developer, whatever. You're working within their issue management systems, their documentation, their processes, their scrums, whatever their teams are organized with. You're just providing persons to work within their systems. Whereas co-development, you're giving a lot more agency and risk, and there's more agency there, but there's no success without success of the co-dev partner. Failure is not an option. It's not like you can just say, well, we'll give it to them, and if they're late, then we'll give it to somebody else. It's like co-dev has to work. They are part of the problem. They're part of the problem. They're part of the solution.
Yeah, I think this, if you look, so we're going to talk about the third box, the co-development box. As you saw previously, we talked about like both sides of the table came with significant staff, significant divided yet overlapping responsibilities on core areas. Again, the cards themselves could not be done without the game design being designed at the Magic the Gathering, at that time, third floor guys and gals. And they would then create that with art, and then that would be delivered to Pipeworks that would then get interpreted because, no, we can't do that. That ain't gonna happen, I'm sorry. Then we would go take it back to design. We go, hey guys, that ain't gonna happen. Can we work out a different rule set? What is it gonna work? And that's just the gameplay part of it, not including the QA, the localization, all the other stuff that it takes to actually ship the game all the way out to public. So co-development is, I think, really where a lot of game development actually is. Even at Wizards, we have many first-party studios, but we have partnerships. And even though we call it first-party development, where the chunk of the team is employees, people with wizards.com email addresses, we still end up with many partnerships. And so I don't know if there is, 100% any studio who has everybody is an employee working on any game these days, unless you were, like we talked about before, a small shop who can actually make a family game, like 5 to 7 people who can actually just make a whole game on their own.
Yep.
So,
and I think a really important part about why this project succeeded for us and why we still talk to each other is we actually had a good understanding about what our roles were going to be as co-dev partners. From the very beginning, we knew that Wizards knew the card game. We did not have to discuss or influence or teach them how to make the game play. And conversely, they came to us, they were like, when it comes to the user interface and the gameplay experience, that's why they hired us. Yeah. So let's talk about hiring people.
Yeah, can I? Yeah, let's do this part. So, okay. So let's take a scenario, not this specific game, but what am I doing at the publisher? We're going, okay, we have a mandate or an initiative. Go make XYZ type of product towards XYZ type of target audience. So it's our job to figure out what the goals are. Always very important to ask the people with the money, what do you really want by the time we finish this project? So we want to interrogate them, get stuff written down so that we understand exactly what the target goals are. When do you want it out by? They always want it too soon, of course, but we negotiate that. And who are the key contacts, both internally, is going to be at the RFP process, the request for proposals process. And then what kind of working agreements are we looking for, target budgets, roles and responsibilities, et cetera. And then work towards rough, again, we're just starting the conversation, rough definitions of milestones. And then we end up setting out a request for proposals, and several proposals come in. I really want to spend some time here because I think this would be, where I think I could be of most service to you folks, is how do we judge RFPs that come back, the responses. Who's written RFP responses? Nobody? Okay, all right. You guys have, yeah. Requests for proposals come out, yeah. Bids, contracts, they come in. So best practice that we've settled on so far is we have several categories that we rate by. So imagine like a staff of 6 or 7 folks looking at the various different categories, rating it 1 through 5, and we end up with a composite score. Though that composite score isn't really the end-all and be-all, going through that exercise is super helpful internally. So we would, for example, put out a request for proposal. Here's some some targets, timelines, et cetera, as much information as we can put out to our business development partners, who will go out and find teams with capabilities, and the teams will send us back proposals, and we would then evaluate them in terms of creativity. Is there a clearly articulated plan? What's the nugget? What's something interesting that this team is bringing in this proposal? Do they have art capabilities? Is it interesting looking? Is it something unique? Is it competent? Is it going to match our budget target? Like, different budgets obviously require different level of art requirements. Is the plan holistic, high quality? Business, how clear are the opportunities that differentiate this proposal from other proposals? Does the developer have a clear point of view on the business model for this title that we want to go after, or they're part of the team? Then obviously we ask for budget proposals in terms of like rough ideas of how much it's going to cost. Staffing ramp goes with that, of course. Technology, Unity, Unreal, something else, custom engine, etc. But we talk about like, is there also tool support from the game development side, so that it's not up to us to provide all the tools, or do we work on it together? Can the developer, this is important, can the developer work within our ecosystem? For example, we're a Jira Confluence shop. Great, it's easy if we can also work in Jira Confluence, but you don't have to. Those things matter a little bit. Now, capabilities, how much does a developer actually have the capabilities to execute this proposal internally? Will they be subcontracting as well? So those are some of the questions that we ask ourselves. And production, Jay, Arrera, and I are both producers, so we come from we have our, this one, matters to us a lot. What is your production methodology? Do you run 2-week sprints? How do you manage conflict? How do you resolve issues within your team? How do you resolve issues vis-a-vis between the two companies? And then this is hard to know. How do we feel in terms of confidence in the partner that we want to work with? And that can mean a lot of different things, but really some of it is like, how do the meetings go? Do we talk to each other? Does the RFP look like some really work went into it, or did you phone it in? Mm-hmm. We have seen that. And then long-term viability, this is the last one. One of the reasons why I'm on the stage with my friend Jay here is that in the middle of the project that you just talked about, there was an acquisition of our previous developer. I've never had that happen before, but in the middle of the project, developer is acquired. They're saying goodbye. I'm going, oh my God, how am I going to do it? And so luckily Pipeworks was there working with us on the port of the game to Xbox and Switch and other things. And we go like, okay, guess what? I think you have to do the whole thing now. So let's talk about that. And that was actually an unusual event that happened on this project. And I've been in the industry for 20-some years. And that's a very rare thing. But now we do think about this. We go like, is the developer or the partner is financially viable? Can they snap it? But that's the other side. Like, if I fail a milestone because the quality wasn't there, are you going to go out of business? That's kind of, that puts the customer over a barrel. And we want to have that ability to be able to say, sorry, honest conversation, this didn't meet the requirements of the milestone. I'm sorry, we're going to have to take it back and blah, blah, blah. But if that hurts your cash flow in a dramatic way, that makes partnership very difficult for us. So these are some of the categories that we talk about and evaluate the proposal and that come back to us.
And as you now know, there's 2 J's, but now what you don't know is that one of us is the evil J.
Oh God.
So I'm
the beard gives it away, the goatee, yeah.
I'm going to talk about how to screw it up. So if you are a vendor, don't oversell your abilities. These are things that we've seen other people do, and we've had to come in and clean up after it. It doesn't help you at all if you sign up for something that you don't actually have the skills or the resources to execute on. Be honest with your capabilities, because whoever the primary is who's organizing it is trying to assemble a team. And if you don't have all of the pieces, that's fine. Just be clear about what are the strengths that you have so that they can help assemble a team so that everyone can be successful. Don't sell your A team and swap out for your B team. People, everyone here is grumbling because they're like,
that hurts my soul.
Right, so just don't do it. Be honest with the team that is actually available to do the work. If you don't have the people available, be honest about that and just say, look, this is our top tier talent, but they're booked out for 9 months. We can mentor these people if you trust us. You can have that conversation and maybe it'll work. But you just need to be honest again about what are the resources that you're actually bringing to bear onto the project. Don't price it to get the job and change order it later.
I'm doing it again. Sorry.
Don't bid it to win it. Again, it's about setting expectations. Change is inevitable, and we're going to talk about that later. But you need to have an honest conversation about what is it realistically going to cost so that you're setting expectations. If they want a $200 million project for $50 million, then you have to say, well, are you aware of what you're asking for, right? So can we scale this back to meet this instead, and will that accomplish your goals? And they say no, and then say, oh, okay, well, let me go find another $100 million, right? But if you set it up where you know that it's going to cost more than what you're bidding it for, you're betting that they're going to show up with more money later that they may not have. So just don't do it. So I'm going to talk about how to get started right. Just like in the RFP process, one of the things that we've done, and we do this pretty consistently, is realign on goals, because oftentimes the people who are involved in the biz dev process and kind of getting the job aren't necessarily the people actually going to be responsible for doing the job. So once you actually have your team together, and that's on both sides, like we'll start to open up and talk to the designers on their team or their engineers on their team, get everybody together and align on what are the project goals, what are we actually trying to accomplish. And it seems like a really obvious thing that people would say, of course, we should align with that. No, but no, seriously, like have this conversation about what does the end goal look like? Because you're gonna find that the goals are changing and that the people who are doing the work were not the same ones that created the RFP, so they may not know what the end goal is. Really get invested. If it's an IP project, really get invested in it, breathe it, love it. For our case, like one of our lead designers was a competitive Magic player. And one of the things that Wizards would do for us is regularly send us boxes and we would do drafts. And we would play Magic every week. And and there was also actually an IP boot camp, if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, we had an IP boot camp. It was a couple days. We had the key members from Pipeworks team come, had food, and we brought in all the lore masters as well as the key franchise members to come and just talk about their vision of what they want for this project, what does this specific part of our IP means, their goals and aspirations, and really spend time together and just soaking in it together. It really was important because it felt like the franchise side was able to get to know the developer who was going to take, here's our baby, please take our baby and raise it carefully. It's very important, and then on the other side, that we were able to see that they also had passion for the IP. So I worked on a Marvel game before this one, and I remember going to New York and hanging out with Joe Quesada, and I'm going, wow. And we're working on one of the games called Marvel Superhero Squad. It was a cute Marvel game. And so initially, we had to get permission for every tiny thing that we wanted to do. But after a while, they understood that, oh my God, they bought $4,000 worth of comic books. They can talk about Doctor Strange and all that stuff. As good as, not as good as, but it was very, I'm sitting next to Joe Quesada talking to him about Doctor Strange. It was amazing. I'd imagine that's what Jess Kapler felt like coming to Wizards and hanging out with our Magic folks. But eventually, we were able to do a lot. We got a lot of leeway to create emotions for Spider-Man and animations for Deadpool, animations for Wolverine, with a lot of leeway. And they knew that because we loved the IP, because we understood the core pillars of the IP, that they didn't need to oversee everything tightly. And that was wonderful.
And I think this is another thing about the difference between kind of co-dev and outsourcing. In co-dev, you're not following the spec sheet. It's beyond the spec sheet. You have as much passion for the project as the IP owners. So aligning on the schedule, again, what are the milestones? What's the whole roadmap for the project look like? Make sure that everybody has an understanding of that. It's very common when you're working a co-dev partner, you're going to be working with people who are working on multiple projects. And so at the beginning of the project, if you're like working with their back-end team, let them know when you're going to be coming to them asking for help, when you're going to be needing changes, so they can plan their roadmaps and around helping you accomplish your goals. Understand who your key contacts are, understand who the decision makers are, the approvers, how work gets approved, and make sure that there's peers for your art leads know who their art leads are, their engineering leads know your engineering leads, and that those relationships are set up directly. Ideally, when you're doing the IP boot camp, you're having an in-person meeting. Even in a virtual world, having personal contact, those relationships that you establish once are going to be the things that are going to help you solve problems, when times are difficult. Understanding those working agreements, what are the work hours, how do you communicate, what tools do you use to communicate, how is work approved, how is code processed, et cetera. And then talk about roles and responsibilities. So who here has seen a RACI chart before? Okay. Who's made a RACI chart? Okay. Who's ever looked at a RACI chart after you made it? Okay, a smaller number, right? The point is...
No, here the question is, who's ever tried to enforce one of these things?
There you go.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
How'd that go? Yeah.
Yeah, pull out the chart, say, I'm sorry, I'm supposed to consult you, you're not a decision maker, right? That conversation doesn't go well. The reason why we bring this up here is because, again, when you're kicking off a project, doing that roles and responsibilities, the thing that I've seen on a lot of projects now where things usually go awry is right here. It comes back to roles and responsibilities not being clear. It wasn't clear who the approver was. This person wasn't consulted. We didn't even know that this pipeline existed. And so spend the time up front to formally have that conversation about who are all the people in the organization and how are they affected by this project, what do they need to be involved in it, and how do they get involved. Because you aren't going to look at this in the moment, but it's the conversation that is going to bring out all the people out of the woodwork so you understand and you can engage them and actually work together. And it also is going to resolve a lot of questions about agency. Like we had this conversation about, well, how many mana points is a card going to be? We very clearly knew that that was going to be handled by the Wizards game designers. So there was never any creative friction on our side. It was like, they won't let us make the game good, right? It's because we understood what our role on the project was and we understood what their role on it was.
But again, I told you that, I talked about that example before. If the design came up with a very complicated mechanic that would require this, and then that happens, and this happens, and this happens, and the engine wasn't gonna handle it, then engineering could come back and say can we think about redesigning this one interaction? And we would say yeah, sure. Good design, good designers, you give them a smaller box.
Yeah.
You go hey, are you a good designer? You should be able to make me a goddamn amazing game with a paper clip and a rubber band. If you tell me no, then you're not a good designer. Go away until you can make me a great game with a paper clip and a rubber band. Then afterwards, I'm going to take away the rubber band, right? And see if you can be that creative. The smaller the box, more creative you can be. Our guys were phenomenal. We would take, nope, can't do this, blah, blah, blah. Then they would come back with oh, this is even better. And we would end up sometimes with better interactions because we had limitations imposed on us from our partnership.
Yeah. Managing change.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So you write the contract, sure. Do you really know what the project is? You kind of do, but not really. I mean, you're doing your best you can. So initial contract, of course, is bullet, 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 bullet. This is delivered, and this is how much you get paid, and you have 10 days to review it, blah, 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 blah. But deep in your heart, you know you're wrong. You go, this is gonna change. So we eventually, keep going, through the development process, we continue to have commitments, and we built trust. Then bullet points did get delivered. Great. And we start to go hey, they know what they're doing. In fact, they know what they're doing sometimes more than what we want, and so they are able to do things that were unexpected. That bullet point wasn't in the contract, but it showed up anyway because it was the right thing to do. On the other hand, this other thing that was super hard isn't going to get done this milestone, and that's okay. We scooted out to the next milestone. So we eventually, after second or third change order, we were able to get to a more flexible contracting method where we had 2 sprints per milestone. It was monthly-ish, and we had a clause that says we will define the exact nature of the next milestone in this current milestone as part of the deliverables. So we ended up so that I didn't have to go beg lawyers who are very busy and can get cranky if you go to them too often to be able to have an agile development contract. But that didn't happen right away. It had to be built up to that point. So ultimately, it was good for the project because then the payment structure of the contract was somewhat more flexible, even though we were paying against monthly milestones with broad, epic level of deliverables rather than detailed, like, did I not get that, chair leg, whatever, that level of detail, which is impossible to do in a contract.
And we did have, over the 5 years, there's multiple contracts, I believe we had 8 change orders through the whole thing. So there were moments where I was like, no, this is something different. This is a pivot. But those were the exception where we had a mutual understanding, like, okay, this is a change order.
Well, we added a platform. That's like a big old thing. Okay, can we get a Steam version now, which was not landscape on the phone, which turned into a whole chunk of work with like full landscape UX to support an excellent high quality PC experience instead of we're just going to leave it landscape, put some pictures on the side and call it good. That wasn't good enough for us. Mm-hmm. So that then turned into bids and figure out how it's going to cost and all that development. Again, it was like another contract.
You want to take this?
No, we had bills to pay.
Yeah, I think so. Where the context is, as you're juggling scope, and understand that, like, for example, the marketing beat is one where this came.
Oh, right, that one.
So there was a last-minute request came in. There was a new show. Was it Game Awards?
Yeah.
The Game Awards. And they said, oh, we need a demo. We need the game that's in progress. We need it to be, like, playable, like, in 1
nearly
month.
done.
Nearly done, like now. And we're like, but no. They're like, it's not. But we understood that part of the business, they had business objectives to accomplish. It was a major show, an event. It was a marketing key bullet point. They needed to have this experience. They also knew that we had bills to pay. We had to continue to make progress on the game. Understanding that we both had business objectives, figured out how can we make this work.
Right.
And so that was one where I think we actually did it without a change order.
Yeah, that's because we had the define the next milestone and the current milestone. We exercised that and we said, like, okay, we will trade off these bullet points for a build that we can use for that event. And we codified it in email and it was good enough.
Now, throughout this whole process, though, and this is where for the XDev managers and the procurement officers, we always did have a contract in place. There always was a mutual understanding of what are the bullet points that are going to be delivered in this milestone. And so we were given enough creative freedom to work within a common understanding. But one of the problems that we've seen with other developers is the publisher or the lead developer gives to their partner and says, go create this system for us, go create a crafting system. And then they would come back 6 weeks later and show the crafting system they created. And they were like, that's not what we wanted at all, right? That's not, and the response was, yeah, well, we didn't like your idea, so we decided to go do this instead. And we're like, no, you can't do that. So that's part of our collaboration, is making sure that we had a common understanding, even if things were moving quickly.
I think, go back again real quick.
Yeah.
Nothing we're saying is anything like earth-shaking. This is all kind of common sense that we're talking about. We hope to give you some best practices and share with you some stories about what happened. But like this common understanding, let's go back to the idea of code development. Code development means that, like, I'm relying, We are relying on each other. It is a partnership. It's not just like I am the customer, right? And you are the vendor. Give me exactly what I want. Sometimes what I want is not what I need, like the song says, right?
Yeah.
And so oftentimes, just like the engineering pushbacks would happen, but we would literally have those big old Thursday meetings where we would talk about like how should the storefront be presented, and we would talk about this, and we would go back to I'm leaning from the future slide.
Go for it.
About like, but really we can both step away and go like, what's good for the customer? Let's just stop and think about like, it would be easy for engineering, it would be easier for design, it might be better for whatever marketing, whoever, but really, what is the best experience for the customer? Again, my customer is, my boss has the baby in his hand, right, and the phone in the other hand. How does he want to spend money, for example? Can he scroll with one hand? Can he push and buy and all that stuff with the baby, make sure the baby is not crying while he's trying to spend money on our games, for example? So, this is me. Okay. Yep. So when you have two large organizations and complex, set of partnerships happening, I call this the hourglass. So I'm on the publisher side, Jay is on the developer side. We can't have everybody talk to everybody. It's chaos, right? So in the middle of the hourglass is the production team. Yes. We had Jay Arrera, Jay Minn, and we also had Mike Cruz and Mike McKinnon. So it was kind of funny. We had 2 Mikes and 2 Jays, 4 producers with 2 names. And we would talk to each other all the time, make sure that we were all in lockstep. Of course, there were lines, like we want to not prevent like direct engineers to engineer conversation, or if the authentication system platform team needed to talk to I miss Alex Owen from Pipeworks. They can talk to each other. It's all in Slack, but producers need to know what is happening so that we can make sure that things are on track, that it is all eventually going to turn into milestone delivered, payment given. And so here's the best practice. We did monthly executive stakeholder meetings, LT leadership team syncs. This turned out to be super helpful for us. Our VP, y'all are taking pictures, like it's just common sense. Our VP and Lindsay, the owner of Pipeworks, we would put them in the same. This is pandemic times and stuff, so now we're all in remote. So in the Teams chat, and we would talk. And at the highest level, at the VP tier, will be able to have a conversation. Producers are there to answer questions, and that's where we could solve problems that the teams themselves couldn't solve. And we also got like, oh, hey, David needed like, again, a trade show video that we didn't know he needed, and he didn't tell us, and now that comes out at this meeting, all of a sudden, then production can take that back and turn it into actions. But also, it's very important to have highest level, honest feedback on performance variety. How is your guys doing? Are they happy? Are they doing everything? Are we giving you all the information that you need to do your job? And he would say like, some of it's good, some of it's not good. And then we would be able to talk about it at the highest level. And then there would be less surprises. And this, to me, was one of the success secret sauces that we had at our
when we were
during our project.
Talking about like why did this project work, this was the one thing that we could say like this made the project successful.
It was an hour of once a month. It's not a lot to ask for, but
having that buy-in at the executive level, and as there was through the process of the project, we had some stakeholder changes. And the project sponsor changed a few times. Yeah,
but it was a 5-year dev cycle, so like reorgs happen.
But having that forum where we could always have direct conversation with who the project sponsor was really important to be able to managing change.
So then, let's say I'm taking too long to answer emails or whatever, but like this is me asking for some grace because, from the publisher side. We're not just talking to one developer. We're talking with many teams. So there's QA, QA, localization, audio, platform, publishing, you name it. So actually, my hourglass, I have several hourglasses that me and my other Mike buddy are managing. And this is we didn't have a slide for this. This is one project. Now you're going to layer this up for like 2-3 projects of multiple hourglasses. So this is just publisher asking for a little grace.
Okay, so we're talking about, I already talked about the passion for the IP and how important that is. And again, it doesn't necessarily have to be an existing franchise IP. It's basically having a common focus and vision for the game. One of the ways that we shared information was, and this gets into how we resolve conflict and decision making, was being focused on the player first.
Right.
So it didn't matter, well, we had creative experience. They had creative experience, but it was never we do this because I'm the publisher, because I say so. It was, well, what's in the best interest of the player?
Yeah.
We recognize our own bias. We played the game a lot, but even while we play it, we realize we're not the player. So we would have formal and informal focus group testing, and I would literally go on site with them, stand on the other side of the one-way mirror and watch the play test with Jay. And then we would take that, our teams would then watch those video feeds and stream from the designers, the engineers, artists. Everyone had access to all of that information so they could see real time how the game was being interpreted by players. And that was hugely impactful. We would have conversations about, oh, well, that didn't happen, or this player is struggling right here. And then an engineer would say, oh, I think I know how I can fix that to make that a better experience for the player.
Right.
And so very rarely did we have to come from the top down and say, okay, new user funnel, we're losing people on stage 3, we want you to go move the button from the right to the left. We never had to have those kind of top-down discussions because we were sharing the information. We had a common understanding of how players were actually playing the game.
I've been at other places where developers weren't invited to focus groups, and we would take the data, chew it up, blah, 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 and then feed back little nuggets back to the developer. But it was so much better when they were actually there. We're all looking at like, oh God, that feature doesn't work, together at the same time. Or, hey, that does work, right? So, co-dev.
I was sharing the results across the entire
everybody
team.
saw it, yep.
Being focused on the data, so we had all the the analytics, the BI, especially during live operations. So it wasn't often a conversation about do this because I said so. It was because this is the KPI that we need to get. How can we get there? So again, I get to talk about how to screw it up. Do it because I said so. We actually have experienced this where we worked with a creative person. We'll leave their name, title, and serial number to protect the guilty. Who it didn't matter whether it was the best solution or it was their solution. And there are a few creative geniuses in this industry, but I don't think any of them would say that they were successful because of their direction. So when we've seen projects go awry, it can be because the ego gets in the way. Milestones slipping without notice or communication. Again, as a service provider, and I had to even take this out to my own teams, like, I don't care what your estimate is, if it's 2 days or 2 weeks, just tell me what it is and then I'll plan around it. Don't tell me it's gonna be 2 days and then take 2 weeks. That's not okay. Now, of course, this is difficult, or oftentimes we're doing things we've never done for the first time. And the importance is no surprises. So if Jay says, this will be easy, and we're like, okay, I think it'll be easy, give me a couple of weeks to work on it. I get a week into it, I'm like, Jay, this is not easy.
No, it's not easy. Okay.
Right.
I thought it was easy.
Having that conversation early, as opposed to, well, I already told him it was easy, I have to get it done in 2 weeks. To be able to come back and say, Jay, actually, I don't think this is easy. I think we oversimplified this. And you go, oh, well, what if we had changed it or do this? Or actually, go ahead, take your time. It's not the lead. It's not driving the schedule. Take your time on it. So just being really open about that. But just don't ever surprise anybody. Conversely, on the publisher side, don't move the goalpost. Allow people to finish. I mean, I've actually had personal experience where the publisher said, here is your exit criteria for this milestone. It's when this queue of bugs is, if the severity is resolved. And by the way, QA is still testing. and adding more bugs to the queue. And so a week before, there's still bugs in the queue. 3 days before, there's still more bugs being added to the queue. The day before, bugs are still being added to the queue. So it's like, when are you done? Well, you're done when we stop finding things. So you have to find ways to allow people to be successful, and part of that is on the responsibility of the publisher or the lead developer to make it clear. It's like, no, get these 10 things done, and if there's something else, then we'll talk about change. Unmanaging the scope while holding the developer to the original budget expectations.
That's just common sense, but yeah, I know that can happen. We go, you don't want to play that lawyer game. And again, no offense to lawyers, but like you said so I don't care if you lose money because you said so I'm gonna hold you to it. Because what does that really do? Like, what does that really do for you? Because then now they're suffering and they're crunching and they're losing people, and then now all of a sudden I don't have my A team because they got tired and they left and whatever. None of that. It's not worthwhile. So. We see when scope changes do happen, like here, we're going to add a Steam version of the game. Then we talk about it honestly. We get the budget approvals from the VPs first because they say, like, you wanted this, so it's going to cost you. We'll get you the estimate, and we'll figure out how it's all going to work out afterwards. And that's how you should do it. Of course, when it doesn't work, is you just play that contract game.
Jay mentioned earlier about using Jira and Confluence. We use whatever tools are appropriate for the project and the client. But what we've found, and I see this on a lot of different projects, that cohesion of communication is really important. So we've worked on projects where they literally made us copy paste because they didn't want to they'll give us access to the source code, but not the Jira database. And it's just like, how are you going to have effective communication if you aren't collaborating that way? Yeah. So if you're going to collaborate, actually use a common set of tools, messaging platforms, document repositories. We actually had to train some of our people that way because they didn't want to share the initial design documents with Wizards until they had their kind of A paper. And so we actually had separate document repositories, and we were like, no, this isn't going to work because you're going to design a 60-page design document, and they're going to say that's not what I want. So it's like, no, you need to be comfortable. Trust Wizards, trust the client to actually give you appropriate feedback. Yep. And we had to be a little bit vulnerable. So again, that trust was earned. But we ended up with a way better product as a result of it.
I think so.
Yeah. Counterparts if the counterparts are not responsive, then there's problems, especially to ad hoc questions. If you fire off something into a Slack message and 5 days later they still haven't responded, if you deliver a milestone and the 10 days have passed and 11 and 14 days and they haven't responded, you cannot collaborate if you're not communicating.
Yeah, it's common courtesy. We want to make sure that every Slack message, emails had at least 24-hour turnaround time. That's only fair. You wouldn't do that to your friends. We wouldn't do that to our partners either.
We talked about the hourglass. We've also seen problems where if somebody just bypasses those producers and try and cuts the producers out of the process and then say, hey, I need you to change this button from the right to the left and change the color, and they're sending that directly from a creative director to a UX artist, real world example, it just sows chaos. Right, and it's unmanaged change, and you really want the production team to be allies to help funnel communication, prioritize work, so that UI artist isn't getting randomized, that they can actually just know that today I need to be working on these things in this priority, and I can do my best work without having some C-level exec randomize them with a random.
Yeah, I would talk to our C-level exec and then go like, what would you like, and blah, 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 and we would take screenshots of every screen and then listen to the person, talk about what they liked and disliked, and put like little PowerPoint callouts and all that stuff. And every PowerPoint callout had a Jira ticket underneath it. And because of that, we were able to say like, great, this does need to go blue because it doesn't go with a logo redesign, blah, blah, blah. And we were able to manage it like tightly tracked. Again, which then goes back to the number of sprints that we can, the velocity that we have available from the dev team. Let's keep going.
Okay. All right, don't ever approve anything. Just kind of let it go. It's good enough. It's good enough. No, I don't like it. Keep noodling it. Yeah.
No, that's terrible.
And then this has been really important, is don't include your co-dev partner in the overall project planning. Keep them in the dark as much as possible. No, that is not a recipe for success.
That doesn't work.
What helped us on this particular project is we knew what the entire project was, whether we were responsible for executing that work or not, so that we could know, okay, this is a really busy beat for them right now. Now's not the time to ask. Or, okay, you have us working on all this over here on this project, but we also know that the critical failure on the project right now from player feedback is over here. Can we help over here? Even though that's not where we're assigned. So that having the context really helps everybody work effectively. So
this is the best part. When it does work, yeah.
Go for it.
What did I put here? Okay. When it does work, yeah, we have better ideas come from the developers, better than what we could have thought of. And the project, you're like, let's do another one together. Like I would love to do another project with Pipeworks. And so here it is. Another project is happening, and another flow of RFPs responses come in. I'm trying to do the scoring exercise again. How do I feel about this company that I've already worked with? So far, yeah, creativity, art could still have depending on the responses that I get, but capabilities, production, confidence, long-term viability, those scores are now well established. They're already in our Jira and Confluence, and I can just get them going right away. The switching cost is small, and that there's this comfort and feeling, and knowing that even if the cost might be a little higher, the fact that I can trust them and that I can maybe do one less milestone turn, all of a sudden it doesn't matter. And so I hope this has been helpful. I mean, ultimately, this isn't really anything earth-shakingly crazy. This is common sense. Answer your emails on time. Be honest. But co-development is trust. Is a dance of two people, two companies, and many more. And so it's not just about you got to do what you got to do to meet the milestone and give me exactly what it says on the bullet points of the milestone, because that ain't good enough, because that doesn't meet the needs of the player. And then it doesn't engender us the desire to work together again. And so doing well, going through, executive LT meetings, and some of the best practice I hope that you can take away will help you go get the next job, which is a lot easier.
Great. And that's us.